Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
And we are the FAIRtax Guys. And it's getting closer. It's getting closer.
Yes,
Our trip
is.
up to CPAC, and I'm getting cold already.
Nah, you'll be fine. I do have a heater in the car. Yeah, we're going to drive up from Florida. We're not going to fly in and so forth. And we're going to have a heck of a time. We've said this before, and we'll say it again. We're very thankful and grateful to Marilyn Rickert and FAIRtax Nation for inviting us to broadcast live from CPAC. Now, Bob is an experienced DJ, radio guy. I've been live on the radio when I call into a talk show, okay? And that's the extent of my experience of doing live radio.
I may hand you the microphone and let you go interview Mike Huckabee or something like that if we can get him.
That would be great, yep. So we're looking forward to this. It's a great opportunity to get the word out about the FAIRtax to more people, and that's what we got to do. That's why we're doing this show. That's why we do a weekly podcast, to educate people, to get you on board, to advocate for the FAIRtax. Because, yes, Congress just passed and the president signed tax relief. We won't call it tax reform.
They're calling it tax reform, but it is actually tax relief.
That's right.
And it's relief, as they say, temporary relief of your cold and flu symptoms. This is temporary relief of whatever symptoms the income tax gives you. The key word there is temporary. We have seen this before, folks. We did it in the 60s. President Kennedy did it in the 80s with Ronald Reagan. And, the benefit was real, the benefit was tangible, but the benefit was temporary, because there are politicians up there in Washington that have their hands out, and their lobbyists are willing to grease their palms to get a little carve out here, or a little change here, or a little deduction here, a little exemption there. That's how we have devolved into over 70,000 pages of income tax code that nobody, I guarantee you, no single individual on the face of God's green earth understands the tax code in its entirety. We can have people like our friend Jade that are as familiar with pieces of it. It's just too big to understand completely. Yeah. And we keep on letting the politicians mess with it. And it's going to collapse under its own weight. It really is.
Yeah, but let's convince Congress that they don't have to wait until it's an absolute crisis, that we can actually do real tax reform before it becomes a crisis. Yeah. And tax reform means changing the basic structure of the tax system.
Yeah, that's why it is important that you out there listening to this program understand that you're being sold a bill of goods, that you have been given tax relief. It is going to help you, but you need to remain as vigilant and as determined as ever to hold your politicians' feet to the fire and demand tax reform. And by that, reform means you change the fundamentals of how the system works. Because what we got now is just a couple of tweaks. They changed the rates. They changed some brackets. So they've just changed some parameters within the big system. But we've said it before. I will say this until the day I die. We still are taxing income. We still have an IRS. The federal government is still getting its chunk off of the top of your paycheck before you even see it, which means that they consider themselves your highest spending priority. You pay the government before you feed your family. That still happens. You still have an unstable system that the Congress critters are playing with constantly. You still have to file a tax return. You still have compliance costs if you're a small business. The fundamentals of the system have not changed. Therefore, we have not gotten tax reform, no matter what they call it. And so we need to keep the politicians' feet to the fire and demand real reform. Get rid of this stupid income tax system. Replace it with a fair tax. That is tax reform, and that is the only thing I'm going to stand for, and I hope you can say the same thing.
Yep. And what Bob just talked about, all the problems with the current tax code, with the income tax, that's your ammunition, folks. That is your ammunition when you talk to your legislator. All right. If your congressman is not a co-sponsor of the FAIRtax, you need to find out why. All right. If they are, you need to thank him or her for being a co-sponsor. But if they're not a co-sponsor of H.R. 25 in the House or S-18 in the Senate, then you need to find out why. Why aren't you co-sponsoring this legislation?
Speaking of co-sponsors, just for curiosity, this big H.R. 1, this big tax reform thing that just passed, how many co-sponsors did it have? Did it have more or fewer co-sponsors than the FAIRtax?
Fewer. I looked it up on Congress.gov. I looked up H.R. 1. That was the bill that they passed. It had 24 co-sponsors. The FAIRtax has 45. We've got more co-sponsors. But, of course, the way it works in Congress is what the Speaker of the House wants to do. Mm-hmm. And he wanted to do that bill. So at least they had 24. But they only had 24 co-sponsors.
That tells you that co-sponsoring is nice, but it's not quite as meaningful as you might think it is.
No.
If your congressperson is a co-sponsor, again, thank them for doing it, but make sure that they're doing more than just having their name on that co-sponsors list, that they are actually pushing the fair tax. Like we know that Congressman Yoho does. He carries these little prebate cards around.
Yep.
He talks to people. He advocates for the fair tax. Of course, he went along with the tax relief package that passed, because, how can you vote against tax relief? But we still need tax reform.
Yep.
And we need more guys like Ted Yoho up there doing that.
Yep. And he's aware of that, and we hope to talk to him at CPAC.
Hopefully we can snag him at CPAC and talk to him. And so we will be doing our Spreaker broadcasts on the Spreaker net and also at Spreaker.com, pardon me. And we'll be doing Facebook Live. Now, we usually been doing a Facebook Live once a month from our Western Command Center here in Marion County. But we're going to forego a Facebook Live in February here from Florida. And we'll be on Facebook Live several times. Again, I'm not sure. We can't say what that schedule is going to be.
No,
it kind of depends on who we can grab when.
Yep.
But we will go on Facebook. The beauty of that, of course, is that after the live event is over, it's still archived on the page. You can go back and see it.
Yeah, that's right. And, so we can do, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. So we can do live broadcast on radio over the Spreaker website. Now, remember, when we're live broadcasting, it's through our Spreaker platform, you might call it. So we'll send out the link. And if you want to email us at thefairtaxguys@gmail.com, we'll send you all the information about it. But otherwise, you go to Spreaker.com. That's like speaker with an R. Spreaker. Spreaker.com. Look for FAIRtax Power Radio. And if we're broadcasting live, boom, it'll come right up. And you can listen to us live right there, right then and there. So, maybe we can...
Yeah, we'll have to find out if Spreaker archives those things the way Facebook archives the videos.
That's my question.
We're going to have to dig into that. So,
so I'm depending on Bob.
As you can tell, we know just enough about Spreaker to be dangerous to get on there. But thank you for listening to it.
Live and learn, huh? So, anyways, and that's another thing you can do for us, folks. We're going to be at CPAC, and we're going to be live on the radio. So if your congressman or senator is planning on being there, ask them to stop by the FAIRtax Nation booth. Ask them to stop by. I imagine we're going to be broadcasting for a while in the morning session and a while in the afternoon session. That's my guess. And so we're going to do as much as we can. So please, if your legislature wants to stop by and talk to us, we would be only too glad to talk to them.
And if you've got a question you'd like to pose to somebody who may be there, send that to us at the FAIRtaxGuys@gmail.com. We will do our best to grab as many different people as we can just in the course of what we're going to do there. But if you've got a question, we would like to be your conduit as well, through which you can get a question to somebody that you might be there. And we'll do our best to get that through to you. Obviously, we can't promise we'll get to all of them, but that is going to be fun. Elaine is going to be funny, walking up and down the hall, grabbing people and sending them over to our booth.
Yep, our roving ambassador. You could also think of her as a people collector, as she collects the people and funnels them over to the FAIRtax Nation booth for us to talk to on the radio. That'd be great.
Indeed. Well, I want to get back to what we were talking about a little bit on our last episode.
Yeah.
Some of the crazy things that this income tax code makes people do. Of course, we talk about the evasion. That drives you nuts when people underreport their income or they overreport their credits or what they're entitled to. That makes people do that. But I think it's driving states like California and New York nuts. That California wants to make have a charitable organization as well, that if you donate money to this charitable organization, that you can match a dollar-for-dollar match credit off your income. In other words, they want to make state taxes in California, turn them into charitable contributions, because there's no cap on charitable contributions. You can do as much as you want to. And
we're talking about the SALT deduction, state and local taxes,
which was capped at $10,000 under this new plan. And so there are people who have more than $10,000 worth of state and local tax liability are trying to find a way to not lose the deduction. So they'll say, all right, the states are going to help them out. California was going to try to make them charitable contributions. New York was just going to say, well, we'll just take more payroll tax out from you. We'll take it from you. We're not going to give you the chance to contribute it as a contribution. We're just going to take it from you before you even get it. Now, we just touched on some of that last time, but let's talk a little bit about why that ain't going to work.
No.
I don't think that's going to work.
While the availability of state tax credits does not disallow taking federal charitable deductions for genuine charitable contributions, any such contribution to a government entity must be solely for public purposes. All right. In other words, you can't be doing this because you're going to benefit you yourself is going to benefit financially. And that's what this whole thing is about.
Yeah, if you contribute to the charitable donation, you get a credit off your taxes. That is a benefit to you. So what you're really doing, payments which function as taxes may be actually classified as taxes, even if states choose to call it something else. This is going to end up in the courts, for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So, all right. Let's see what else. Again, we're looking at this article from the Tax Foundation of January 5th. And it was great. And by the way, thanks to Randy Fisher for sending this to us. It's great information.
Yeah, and let's give credit to the author as well. Jared Walsek is listed as the author of this this article as well. So we don't want to use somebody else's work without giving them credit for it. But this was insane. What the addiction that people have to this tax system. They are willing to jump through these kind of hoops to keep the tax system. Why do that? Why don't you put this kind of effort into getting rid of the tax system, the income tax, funding the federal government with a fair tax? If there was as much effort put into passing the fair tax as there is to evading the income tax, we'd have it tomorrow.
That's a good point. And let's see. This another thing that it says here. It says, although proponents have contemplated the possibility of a graduated rate payroll taxes. Now, what they mean there, right now, payroll taxes, for Social Security and Medicare, they're not graduated. They're at 7.65 no matter what you earn, even if you're a low earner or a very high earner. They're not graduated.
They're regressive as can be.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a terrible tax on the working poor. Okay. So, although proponents have contemplated the possibility of a graduated rate payroll tax to replace graduated rate income taxes, they have yet to address how such a system would handle individuals with multiple income streams.
More than one job.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before. One of the reasons for evasion is that you used to have a country in which everybody worked for somebody else and everybody got a W-2. That's no longer the case. With the internet and all these connections possible, you can have somebody who earns money as an Uber driver and they do pet sitting and maybe they're a mobile notary public. And
maybe they have an eBay store.
Yeah, and they do taste. They set up a little tasting booth in a grocery store. They can have multiple streams of income very easily. So how do you keep all those things straight? And how do you make sure that they're reporting income from every single little source? It's impossible, and it's really unrealistic. Somebody has got the guts to go out and earn money in these several different ways and not be hemmed down by what they might be very independent. They have a very independent streak. Okay, we want to encourage that type of thing. The income tax does not encourage them to do that. So what happens is that a lot of their income doesn't get reported.
Yeah, but those people buy things and they become taxpayers under the fair tax.
Yep, everybody buys stuff. And so it's hard to evade the consumption tax, but an income tax has more problems every single day that goes by.
Okay,
more and more problems.
We're about halfway through here. I want you to get to that list of stuff from the New York Post. I looked at some of that before there. Let's get that in here before we run out of time.
Okay. Well, this is actually from October 5th of last year. Yes, U.S. tax cuts will mainly benefit those who pay the most taxes. Okay, well, that's not fair. Why should the rich get all the breaks?
Think about that. They are selling this thing as a huge tax reform package, but in the same breath they're saying, let's give this to the middle class, which is fine. But the middle class, unfortunately, just does not pay the bulk of the income tax bill in this country. So we want to make sure that we give a nice tax break to a very small section of people, maybe large in numbers, but if you talk about how much of the total income tax burden is borne by that group, they want to concentrate on the people who really aren't paying the freight.
Yeah.
Makes no sense.
Because it has some information here. The top earning 20% of households pay 88% of all federal income taxes.
Okay, but they don't need a break.
The top 20% are paying 88% of all the income taxes. So who's going to get the tax break? It's the people who are paying the taxes. That's who. Now, in the next paragraph here, it talks about in 2013, the latest data year available, the top 20% of households paid $1.2 trillion in income taxes. Okay, let me digest that. The top 20% paid $1.2 trillion. That's a lot of money. The next 20% paid $175 billion. That's a whole lot less than $1.2 trillion. That's maybe, I don't know, it's not quite 10%, but still, it's a lot less. So how are you going to give the people who are paying that small amount a huge tax break? They're not paying that much to begin with. And yet, you hear some people in the media and in Congress saying, oh, it's not fair. This is just a gift to the rich. Well, unfortunately, that is the reality. It is the rich who are paying most of the taxes. And then, on top of that, the bottom 60% are paying collectively zero, okay? 60% of the people are not paying taxes. In fact, they're getting a refund that they didn't pay in. You can't really call it a refund, can we?
Yeah, it's a refundable tax credit, they call it.
They're getting a credit. So
call that a redistribution payment.
Yeah. So the bottom 60% are not paying taxes. How do you give them a tax break if they're not paying taxes? So this argument, it's a tax break for the rich. Well, it's the wealthy that are paying the taxes. And you know what else? It's the wealthy that are creating the jobs, my friend.
Yeah, but how do you convince the people that are pushing for that kind of thinking that the fair tax is the way to go? Because the fair tax is going to it's going to be very progressive in its application.
Yeah.
Which is a strange thing for a sales tax because, again, this fair tax has the prebate. You are reimbursed for the taxes you pay on your spending up to the poverty level, i.e. for whatever you decide are your basic necessities of life.
Yep.
But, if people who want a system under which the top 20% pay 80% of the taxes, the fair tax is still going to do that for them.
Yep. So let's go back to FAIRtax 101. Everybody pays the fair tax on everything that they purchase.
New goods and services.
Yeah, except education. That's the only thing that's exempted. But yes, for all goods and services, everybody pays the fair tax, and everybody gets the prebate. Now, the prebate will be most important to the working poor because they're the ones that have to be protected against excessive taxation. We want the working poor to become the working middle class. We want them to get, to get ahead, and the fair tax does that. So the prebate simply reimburses them for the fair tax on the basic necessities of life. Plus, they have the advantage that everybody gets the prebate. I don't care if you're, Bill Gates and you're a multi-billionaire, doesn't make any difference. Your family is eligible for the prebate.
I guess you have the decision of whether you want to apply for it or not.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But, that's
that
true.
might be more trouble to them than it's worth.
If you're working poor, the fair tax, gets rid of the withholding from your paycheck. Mm-hmm. It makes you stop paying the government before you feed your family. It gets rid of the payroll taxes, plus it gives you the prebate. So that is a godsend for the working poor. They're going to have a lot more money in their pocket.
Yep. And again, FAIRtax 101, it really helps the working poor. And it really is progressive because if you're just barely getting by, if you're a family of four and you're making about $32,000, that's right about at the poverty level. You're just getting by. Mm-hmm. You're not taking long vacations, in foreign countries and things like that, or buying a new boat and stuff like that. You're just getting by. You're putting food on the table and clothes on your back, and you're providing shelter. and you're not able to do much of anything else. We're going to protect those people against excessive taxation. All right, you shouldn't have to pay taxes on what it costs to stay alive, under the fair tax. And that's what the prebate does. Plus, they have the advantage of buying used stuff on the big ticket items like cars and houses. When it's time for these folks to buy a new car, or if they finally can get out of that apartment and buy their own house, if they buy a pre-owned house, we don't call them used houses, do we? Anyways, don't. if it was sold once before, it is not subject to the fair tax again. So that's a huge advantage to them. Now, on the other end of the income scale, let's say you're making $250,000 a year for a family of four. Okay, you guys are doing all right. And you're still going to get the prebate, but for you, it's not going to be that big of a deal, all right? But when you go if you're spending a lot of that income, if you are buying boats and big screens TVs, and you're taking, wonderful vacations here and there and so forth, you will be paying the fair tax on those items, and you'll be paying relatively more because you're spending more. So the fair tax is absolutely progressive and without a lot of congressional tinkering.
It is mathematically impossible not to pay your fair share.
Yeah.
Because your fair share is determined by how much you spend.
Yeah. So, go ahead, try to find fault. We're going to have to do another episode on the flaws of the fair tax.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that'll
now,
be
these are not
up.
actual flaws. This is stuff people have made up and are trying to say are flaws of the fair tax.
That's right. Yeah, and we shoot them all down. So.
Oh, how much fun is that?
Because they're playing fast and loose with the reality there. So anyways, this little thing from the New York Post here, they're talking about tax reform and those people that are getting biggest tax break. Well, it's very simple. The people that are paying the taxes are getting the tax break, all right? The people that are not paying taxes, how are you going to give them a break if they're not currently paying taxes? But let me qualify that. They're not paying income tax. They are paying payroll tax.
They are paying the payroll tax. Yeah. That is the most regressive tax on the books.
And this tax plan doesn't do anything about that, does it?
It doesn't do a thing about it. And that leads me right into what I was thinking. We have got to convince everyone listening to this podcast and get them to convince their friends and their family and all, we did not get tax reform.
Right.
I'm going to keep pounding on this. We did not get tax reform because they did not change the fundamentals of the system. We're still taxing income. We still have an IRS. You still have withholding. You still have those payroll taxes. You still have to file an income tax return. And the income tax return on a postcard, all that talk kind of vanished. Where did that go?
Yeah, they don't seem to be talking about that anymore.
Nothing changed about the way the system works. They changed some of the parameters on it. They changed some rates. They changed some brackets. But they did not change the way the system works, which is what you have to do in order to have real tax reform. And we are calling on everybody out there to hold your Congress critters' feet to the fire, make them realize that they did not deliver tax reform. They can call it that if they want to. You can call it a charitable contribution taxes if you want to, or tax is a charitable contribution if you want to. It doesn't change the fact that it's not. So they can call this tax reform if they want to. It doesn't change the fact that it's not. And we at FAIRtax Power Radio, and hopefully our other friends at FAIRtax Nation, AFFT, and all the other fair tax organizations across the country, are not going to be satisfied with being given tax relief and having it called tax reform.
Now, if the tax relief were permanent, all right, that would be good if they flattened out the tax code and it stayed like that. But is that going to happen? No, we do a congressional tax proposal scorecard every time. And let's see, on the last episode, it was up to 1133. I didn't look at it.
Yeah, we haven't looked since.
Yeah, but that's in 12 months, folks. In 12 months, people in Congress, members of Congress, have submitted over 1,100 proposals to change the tax code, and those proposals kept rolling in even while the House and the Senate were wrangling with the different parameters and so forth, and they were hammering out getting a compromise bill and so forth, and the tax proposals to change the tax code kept coming in. So even though they were working on H.R. 1, there were people in there submitting HR 3500.
Well, that tells you that it's just not going to stop. That the system is driven by lobbyists and politicians and not by what's in the best interest of the taxpayer, which is you, by the way.
So there's no stability to an income tax. If it could stay flat, that would be good. But we know from experience it is not going to stay flat. They're constantly hammering away. And I've heard, I got to look this up for the next show. The Republicans are already talking about how to change the plan they just passed. I'm not kidding. Yeah.
How big a surprise is that?
Oh my God. Yeah, because they realize there's some things in there that weren't quite the way they had hoped they were going to be.
Yeah, there's some funny things in there that they say they had to put it in there to get around some kind of Senate rules.
Yeah.
So that they could run it on reconciliation and not have to have 60 votes because I don't think anything's ever going to pass the Senate anymore if it takes 60 votes to pass anything.
No, they're so polarized. Yeah, it's too bad. But anyways, that's the way it is. Okay.
I say we're getting on down to the end of this FairTax Power Radio episode. Again, we thank everybody for listening. Look for us at CPAC for sure. And let's go through that Ebates thing here one more time. This is relatively new.
Yeah.
Because we used to have a site called FairtaxRewards.com. You could make an account on that, and that was just kind of a conduit. If you went through that site in order to go to eBay or in order to go to Amazon or in order to go to Walmart or in order to go to any one of hundreds of different online shopping sites, if you went to FairTax Rewards first, then you got a little bit of a stipend, and the FairTax got a little bit of a stipend. That is no longer doing the same thing through Ebates now.
Yeah,
which is a more established platform. If I'm not mistaken, you're getting a little bigger chunk now.
I think so.
When you get something back. But you have the option when you sign up for Ebates, that's EBATES.com, that you can, if you want to, and hope that you will decide to donate the Ebates that you get back to Americans for Fair Taxation. So that's a way that you can support the fair tax without taking a dime out of your own wallet.
Now, a little bit of housekeeping with the Ebates. When you sign up, you have to put in there, where you want the check. They actually send you a check, okay, where you want that set. Once you do that, you're able to pick an alternate organization or person to send it to. So we ask that your alternate organization to send it to is the Americans for Fair Taxation. It's a great way to financially support these people in their quest to get real tax reform for you. And we're doing this for you, and we're doing it for our grandchildren. And, in a couple of years, I'll probably have some great-grandchildren. It's kind of a scary thought, but it's going to happen. I got grandchildren approaching that age. So we're doing it for the people of this country. The fair tax is going to be so much better. And, you can see the economy growing now, but watch it explode under the fair tax when businesses, one, don't have an income tax, and two, their compliance costs are cut by about 80 or 90%.
Which puts American companies in a much, much nicer position in the global market.
Oh, yeah. So Ebates is a good way to do that. Please support these organizations like the Americans for Fair Taxation and FairTax Nation. Again, we want to thank FairTax Nation for inviting us to CPAC. Great opportunity for Bob and I to get the word out about the fair tax.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to have more information.
We're going to be on Spreaker, on our regular podcast platform. They do let you go live. Once we figure out how to do that, we're going to do that. Of course, we'll be doing our Facebook Live. We're not going to do one for February from your Western Command Center, but we will be doing multiple Facebook Live events from CPAC, and hope that you can check that out. Yeah. Again, the FairtaxGuys@gmail.com is our email address. Like us on Facebook as well. And that's all the time we got for this edition of FairTax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
The FairTax Guys again reminding you that the fair tax is America's big solution, and once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
Fair tax is coming. Don't